Hello friends, I hope you all are doing well and staying safe at your own place. I, CA Pujan Kapadia, welcome you all on my today's lecture on the subject Advanced Accounting and Auditing Paper 5. Friends, we are dealing with the chapter named Types or Classification of Audit, under which we had studied various types of audit classified from the different viewpoints. So, today we are on the verge of completion of this particular unit. So, before moving towards the end of the topic, I would just like to recollect all the types of audit that we had studied till now in this particular chapter. The first was on the basis of viewpoint of legal or from the viewpoint of forms of organization. If I want to talk from the viewpoint of compulsion, that is a legal viewpoint, I could say audit which are required under law, which is compulsory, or the audit which are not compulsory, that is they are voluntary audit. Under this, we had covered various types of audit which are being compulsory under various acts which are in force in India. In second slide, I had mentioned specifically income tax audit. That is when it is compulsory to get your books of accounts audited under income tax audit, and we are having a specific limit for business and for the profession. If I'm undergoing business, if my turnover exceeds 1 crore rupees, it is necessary to get my book of account audited. If I'm undergoing profession, then the limit is 50 lakhs rupees. And the second category is where the audit is not required under any law. That is voluntary. If you want to get your books of account audited, you can get it audited, but it is not compulsory at all. So this was our first classification. Second was on the basis of time, which means when the audit is being conducted, under which we had studied two categories. First was interim audit. Interim audit, as the word suggests, it is the audit which is being conducted between two periodical audits. That is, whenever I am conducting my audit between two balance sheet dates for any interim purpose, like declaration of interim dividend or submission of my quarterly statements to some authorities like SEBI, I need to get my books of account audited within the 2 years. Fine. So basically, my year is ending on 31st March. Last year ended on 31st March 2019. This year is ending on 31st March 2020. Now, if I'm getting my books of account audited in middle of this dates, then it is going to be termed as interim audit because it is having some interim purpose. And the second one was annual audit or final audit or periodic audit or balance sheet audit. It is having four names, so question can become under any of the names. Under this, we need to remember, friends, that any audit which is being conducted after the end of financial year, that is, once my financial year is getting completed, after this, I'm commencing my audit. This audit is being completed in a continuous sitting. That is, it is not like that I'm regularly going to visit the place of business of my client. Once I started my audit, I would like to complete this in a continuous sitting. That is in a one go. And the last is, it is conducted only once in a year. Such kind of audits are known as periodic or the balance sheet audit. Next classification was on the viewpoint of continuity. That is how continuously you are carrying on your audit activities. Under which the first one was continuous audit or detailed audit. When you as an auditor or your audit staff is constantly engaged during the entire period with the business activities of the client and verifying the books of accounts, and it is known as continuous audit. Important point over here is you are constantly engaged with the client. Second type was complete audit. This is basically preferable when your books of accounts are being audited for the very first time. It is not practical. Why? Because under this type of audit, we are checking or verifying each and every transaction. So it is basically time consuming activity, and practically it is not feasible to carry out such kind of audit. So it is advisable to go for this type of audit only when you are getting your books of account audited for the very first time, because it is but natural when the audit is being carried on for the first time, you need to go in detail and understand the business very well. So you need to check and audit each and every transaction. The next part is partial audit. Whenever you are auditing only some specific records or some specific books or certain specific accounts, that is, you are not auditing each and everything of the business, you are just auditing some selected things, then such kind of audit is known as partial audit. Generally, When there is a sole proprietorship or a partnership business, the owners or the partners are suspecting any kind of fraud. For example, if I am the owner of the business and I feel there is some manipulation of accounts or there is certain misappropriation of cash in my cash account. So what I am going to do is I am going to order the audit for cash book. Now this particular audit is just limited to cash account only, as a result of which it will be classified as a partial audit. Next is auditing in depth. As I have mentioned you earlier also, this is one of the most important 2-mark question which may come up in your examination. So I would like to request you all to go through this definition in a concise manner. Under this, we had studied whenever I am examining a particular transaction from its origin to its conclusion. Fine. Under which I am also verifying each and every records which were created in the transaction chain, and I'm checking the appropriate authorization. It means whenever I'm checking any transaction, I'm checking from the very first point till the very last point, so that I'm going into detail for that particular transaction. Such kind of audit is known as auditing in depth. Next classification was on the viewpoint of scope, under which we had covered 3 subcategories. First was internal audit. Internal audit is basically being done with the appointed by the management. So when the management feels that they want to get the books of accounts of the company audited, they may appoint internal auditor to carry out such kind of audit. This scope, that is what works or what activities are supposed to be carried out by the auditor, is also being defined by the management. As a result of which we would say internal auditor is the employee. Fine. Against which there is a second part, that is external audit. External audit is something which is being necessary by any law in force. So shareholders are the person who are authorized to appoint the external auditor. What work he is supposed to do is being defined, that is the scope is being defined under that particular law under which the audit is conducted. As a result of which I can say that external auditor is not an employee. He is the outsider or the independent person who is carrying on the audit of your business. And the third one was branch audit, under which we had studied that when you are having multiple branches across the company auditor is not, it is not possible for the company auditor to cover each and every branches. So we may appoint separate auditor for individual branch. Such kind of audit is known as branch audit, under which we had studied what are the rights of the branch auditor, who appoints the branch auditor. Here it is written, branch auditor is appointed by the shareholders in AGM, that is annual general meeting. If shareholders fail, then it is being appointed by BOD, that is board of directors, with consultation to the main company auditor. Powers, reports, and lastly is the eligibility, that is when it is required to appoint a branch auditor. And the last category that we had started with is classification of audit from the viewpoint of specialty. So these are basically certain special types of audit which are generally not required, but if specific act is applicable to you or there are certain specific purpose, you may go for this kinds of audit. Under which we had studied the first one, that is cost audit. Cost audit is basically the verification of the correctness of the cost accounts. So the first thing that I'm checking in cost audit is whether my cost accounts are being maintained in a correct manner or not. Is everything is being recorded correctly? Is there any mistake in the recording of the transaction, cost transaction or not? Now basically what are the cost transactions? The transactions which are basically related to goods, raw materials, work in progress, that is purchase, sales, purchase return, sales return, consumption, production, manufacturing, processing, etc. Under which we do take care of material costing, standard costing, labor costing, overhead costing, and etc. So basically it is all about costing, under which first of all what I'm doing, I'm verifying the correctness of the cost accounts, and at the same time I'm checking the adherence to the accounting plan. That is, I am checking that whether my plan, that is the costing plan that I had decided, all the activities are being carried out in accordance with that plan or not. So this is about cost audit. Under which there was one important question which is being reflected on your slide, cost auditor. This slide basically is the answer to the question, state the legal provisions with respect to cost audit. So this all are the provisions that you need to write down when such question is asked in your examination. So the first point that I have written over here is it has been conducted under section 233B of the Companies Act. Who is eligible to be appointed as the cost auditor? So initially cost accountant by the Cost and Works Accountants Act 1959, whom we popularly known as CM, that is cost and management accountant these days, right? If they are not available in sufficient quantity, then any chartered accountant with an experience of not less than 10 years in practice can be appointed as the cost auditor. Who appoints cost auditor? It can be appointed by board of directors with the previous approval of central government. What is the power of cost auditor with respect to cost audit? It is same as the power of the statutory auditor with respect to statutory audit. To whom the report has been submitted by the cost auditor? It has been submitted to central government and not to the shareholders. Shareholders are generally forwarded a copy of the report of the cost auditor. And what are the basic matters which are included in the cost audit? First is to obtain proper information and explanations. Second is maintaining proper cost accounting records. And third is to comment upon whether true and fair view pertains with respect to cost of production, processing, manufacturing or mining activities. So broadly speaking, this is the answer to the question legal provisions with respect to cost audit. Next we had covered was management audit. In this particular unit, we are also going to term it as an efficiency audit. In this particular type of audit, we are not talking about the data or the financials, fine. We are talking about the effectiveness or efficiency with which the activities are being carried on in a particular organization. So what I'm doing from the very top level to middle level to bottom level, I'm evaluating the efficiency with which the work is being performed by all the members of the organization. And I'm ensuring that the sound management practices are being prevailed in my organization. This type of audit is basically known as efficiency audit or the management audit. And lastly, we had started with the term propriety audit, under which I had told you when an audit is being conducted by keeping in mind the public interest and the normal standards of conduct with the various principles like regularity, prudence. With prudence, I had explained you, I'm incurring any expenditure considering that it is going from my own pocket. So though I am expending the money of my company, at the time of spending that money, I am thinking as of it is my own money. So I am going to do expenses in a judicial manner. I am not just going to spend it out all. This approach is known as prudence approach. And the last is impact of various actions and decisions of the authorities. I would just like to request you to go through this definition once again so we can continue with our topic from where we had stopped. Well, I hope you are done with the definition. So let's start with the topic. We had already covered this in our previous lecture also, but I would just like to take a view quickly on this particular topic. The name of the topic is Objects of Government Audit. That is, what are the basic objectives of government audit? When the government is ordering to conduct the audit of the government financials and the performance of the government unit, any government organization, then what could be the main objectives for the same? We are going to cover it in this particular question. First is to check that duly authorized provision of fund for expenditure. Whenever I am making any provision for expenditure, I need to check that it is duly authorized by the right person. Second is there should be a proper sanctioning by the authorized person to incur expenditure. I had talked about authorization metrics in our previous lecture, under which I was explaining that if I want to incur expenditure up to say 1 lakh rupees, Mr. A can approve the same. But if I want to incur expenditure of more than 1 lakh rupees but less than 10 lakh rupees, the right is not with Mr. A. He need to take the approval of Mr. B. So in this particular case, based on the amount of expenditure, we need to check that whether proper authorization, whether proper sanctioning has been taken place or not. The third is payment made to the person and acknowledgement by the letter. That is, whenever we are making the payment, we should check that the payment is made to the right person who was having a right to receive the same, and at the same time we need to take the acknowledgement that he has actually received that particular payment. This is basically to avoid any payment into wrong or the dummy accounts. Next is charge or expenses correctly classified. I need to check that personal expenditure are not being recorded in the books of government, and at the same time I need to check out that the expenses of a particular department are being recorded in that particular department only. Next point is regular recovery of sums and proper credit in account. We need to check that certain accounts which are being overdue since long are being recovered. That is, suppose if any person has done a transaction with his relative and that relative has not made any kind of payment since 2 years, 3 years. General business terms is 30 days to 60 days, but he is not paying me since last 2 years. Such account should be identified and a quick action need to be taken on that particular part. So there should be a regular recovery of the money to the government department. Next is proper valuation and periodic review of stores and stock. That is from the viewpoint of quantity and from the viewpoint of value. That is, we need to updatedly need to take the stock and the stores amount wise as well as quantity wise, so that I come to know what I am having on my hand as on particular date, because it is important to have a updated information at any point of time. And the last is whenever I'm incurring any kind of expenditure, I need to check that whether the following principles are being followed. First is prudence. That is, I've told you that I should treat as it is my personal expenditure. It is being going out of my own pocket. So suppose I feel that I want to purchase a particular article for my organization. The article is costing 1000 rupees, but I should not think like that. If it is a payment, the payment is going to be done by the government, let us spend 5000 for this. No, you should adopt a judicious approach as if you are purchasing it for yourself. That is your prudence approach. Second is no personal gains. You should not be benefiting out of the expenditure you are incurring. Third is it should not be for the specific group or community unless any policy says so. And lastly, allowance should not become the source of income. For example, my government company is providing me the allowance that, for example, from my home to my office, I am regularly traveling. Now, government is compensating this expense, like say rupees 100. Now, I should ask only for the expense which is being actually incurred. Now, actual expense I am incurring to commute from my home to my office is 50 rupees, and I am charging 100 rupees for the same, then it is wrong. So, what they are telling is you should not be making the allowances as the source of your income. So this is what we had covered under the objects of government audit. Next part is matters included in propriety audit. So this can be one of your question, like what is propriety audit? Explain in detail the matters included in propriety audit. So this thing we need to learn, like what things are included when I'm conducting the propriety audit. The first point is I need to check as the propriety auditor that proper security of loans and advances, and it should not be prejudicial. First of all, I need to check that whenever any loans and advances are being given, I had taken proper security against this same. And secondly, this loans and advances should not be prejudicial. It should not be like that I am just lending money to my relatives and not lending to someone else. No, it should be on the basis of judicial norms which are being laid down in the organization. Second is transactions merely represented by book entries, whether prejudicial. That is, we need to check that if I'm showing any transaction on my books, fine, in the books of accounts, are they actual transaction or they are just being recorded just for the sake of being recorded? So actually I had entered into some another transaction, but just to show a different picture, I'm recorded it as a true picture in my books of accounts. This is wrong. So basically I need to check that whether the transactions which are being represented by the book entries are actually not prejudicial, are actually as per the norms in which they are supposed to be recorded. Third point is, if your company is not a banking or the investment company. If you are a banking or an investment company, this point is not applicable to you. But if you are not doing a business of banking or investment, then whether it has sold shares, debentures, or securities at a price lower than the purchase price. So what they're telling is, if I had made any investment in shares, debentures, or security, for example, I had purchased those at the price of rupees 1000, and now I'm selling the same at the price of rupees 900. Now, practically speaking, if you are a businessman, you are not going to incur loss, right? So if this is the case, then I need to make a proper check on that particular transaction and to dig much deeper to find out the reason why the company has done so. So basically, your shares, your securities, or your debentures should be sold at the par or at the value higher than your face value. It should not be sold lower than your purchase price. If you have sold the same, it is again to be the matter of concern from the viewpoint of proprietary audit. Next is, whether the loans and advances made are shown as deposits or not. You need to comment on this point also. Next is, whether personal expenses are charged to revenue account. Now, if you are incurring any expenditure for your own sake, and if you are charging the same to your revenue account, then it is wrong. Fine. So you need to comment on this particular point also. And the last is, if stated in books that the shares are allocated for cash, whether cash has been actually received. So basically what they're telling, when I'm issuing share to my shareholders and against which I'm collecting cash. So first question is whether the cash has been actually received by me. If not, then whether the books and balance sheet is correct, regular, and not misleading. So first question I'm going to ask is whether I have received cash for which I had allotted the shares or not. If I had not received the same, then I need to question whether my books and the balance sheet is correct, regular, and it is not misleading. So it is being showing true and fair view. So friends, the 6 points are the matters included in proprietary audit. As a proprietary auditor, whenever you are conducting the audit of any of the government department or any government company, you need to comment on all the 6 points. So yes, if the question comes up in your examination, write a short note on government audit. First of all, you are going to write the definition of proprietary audit. You are going to write down the objectives, and you are going to state the matters. Fine. So I hope I am clear with this particular thing. I'm just giving you a minute. Take a quick view on all the 6 points which are written over here. Well, I hope you are clear with this particular points. So let's move ahead with the next topic. It is spatial audit. It is defined under section 233A of the Companies Act. Now let's read out the points which are written over here. Central government is empowered to order the following cases. Business affairs not managed with respect to sound business principles or prudent commercial policies. That is, central government is having the power to order special audit of any of its organization. Under which cases? There are 3 cases which are given over here. First case is, if my business affairs, that is, my business is not being managed according to the sound business principles or practices, then I as a central government can order special audit. Second situation is when the management of company is supposed to cause damage to the interest of the trade, industry or business to which it pertains. So I am managing the company in such a manner that it is basically going to cause damage to the interest of the trade under which I am doing. For example, I am running a textile business and I am doing the business or managing a business in such a manner which is going to harm the interest of the textile industry. And in that particular case also, central government can order for special audit. The third is when financial position is supposed to be endangered its solvency. So when you are doing a business in such a manner that your liabilities are going to exceed your existing assets. So you are doing a business in a loss manner. That is, your financial position is endangered, that your solvency capacity is such, your financial position is such that you won't be able to pay off your liabilities also. And under such scenario also, central government can order special audit. So first of all, friends, you are supposed to remember the three situations under which central government can order special audit. Now, who can be appointed as a special auditor? It is written over here. Any chartered accountant or the company auditor can be appointed as a special auditor. Now, the expenses of this audit, who is going to bond this particular expenses? It is going to be determined by the central government. So the amount of expenditure to be incurred on such kind of audit is going to be decided by the central government. But who is required to pay this expenses? It is going to be paid by the company whose audit is being actually conducted. So amount will be determined by central government, but it is going to be paid by the company itself. The last point is central government may take such action on receipt of the report. If no action within 4 months, then central government will send a copy to the company with its comments thereon. So basically, special auditor is required to submit its report to the central government. If no action is taken by the central government within 4 months, then it will be sending the report to the company with the comments that the company needs to follow accordingly in that particular thing. In short, you just need to remember that what is special audit. So special audit is a special kind of audit which is being ordered by the central government to be conducted of a particular company if it fills any of these three scenarios. That first is your business is not being managed as per the sound or the prudence principles. Second, you are managing your business, but it is causing damage to the interest of your trader industry. And third, you are doing a business in such a manner that your financial position is endangered, your liabilities are increasing, your assets are decreasing. And in such a case, central government is going to order special audit. Chartered accountant or a company auditor is the authorized person who can be appointed as a special auditor. Expenses of the audit are going to be determined by the central government, but they are supposed to be paid by the company itself. So I hope I'm clear with this topic. And the last one is social audit. What is social audit? A social audit is an audit undertaken by an independent expert to prevent the misuse of power by the company and to find and verify truthfulness of the company's social activities. Two important points to remember in this particular line that I have bold and underlined. First is why I'm undertaking such kind of audit: to prevent the misuse of the power of the company. That is, if any company is having some power, it is having some authority, I need to check that it is not misusing its power. And the second is verifying the truthfulness with which the companies are undertaking their social activities. Now, what is the scope? That is, what are the activities that you are going to check under the social audit? Now, this all are basically the social purposes that a company can undertake. And I, as an independent auditor, is going to check that if a company is working on a pollution control, I am going to check that whether that pollution control activity is being undertaken in a true and fair view or not. So similarly, all these are the points that you just need to read and write down in your examination, that what all are the activities which can be undertaken by the company in the name of social activities. Let's read it out quickly. First is pollution control. Second is reducing the environmental risk, that is environmental damages. Third is proper utilization of natural resources and checking that your natural resources are not being used or utilized in such a manner that they are depleting, that is, they are going away. So we need to preserve the same. Fourth is protection of power. Next is improved quality of production, reduction in cost of production, cordial relationship between all the stakeholders, that is a healthier, harmonious relationship. Next is fair trade practices, that is you are going and conducting your business activities in an ethical manner, in a fair manner, in a transparent manner. Next is employees welfare, their healthcare, etc. And last is giving training to employees. I hope all the words are self-explanatory to you. So you just need to remember what all are the activities conducted under this social audit. What I need to do as an auditor, I need to check and verify that whether all this activity of the company are being undertaken in a true manner or not. They are being conducted in a fair and a transparent way or not. It should not be like that the company is just showing these things on paper, but actually there is no contribution from the viewpoint of company. So basically, we as an auditor need to verify that first, company is not misusing the power that it has received, and secondly, it is actually undertaking all these activities and actually contributing towards the growth and development of this society. Last point I've stated over here, Mao Caro 1988, the full form of which is the Manufacturing and the Other Companies Auditors Report Order, which was as good as the Social Audit Report, was replaced by CARO, that is Company Auditors Report Order, from 1/7/2003. This is just the informative thing that you need to remember and write in your examination. So as of now, there is CARO, which is being implemented and being annexed to at the time of submitting the audit report of the company. What is the full form of CARO? It is Company Auditors Report Order. It is equivalent to your social audit report. Under CARO, there are several points which are written, under which basically I will show you the specimen in any of our upcoming lecture also. But what is being written? There are several points, like for example, whether the stock of the company is being properly valued or not, whether there is any fraud in the management of the business or not. So there are n number of points on which the auditor is required to comment that whether all these points which are stated in the CARO 2003 are being properly being verified or not. Now the CARO 2003 is being recently replaced by CARO 2020, which is going to be implemented from the next year. But since it is not being implemented, I had not stated the details of the same in this particular slide. In short, by this particular topic, you need to remember what is social audit, what is the basic objective, that there are two basic objectives: to prevent the misuse of power and to verify the truthfulness of the company's social activities. What all are the activities included under the social audit, and which is the report basically which signifies the social audit report. So the name of the same is CARO 2003. Recent one is CARO 2020, which is supposed to be implemented from the next year. I hope I was clear with all the points that we had discussed today. And with this, the unit comes to an end. So I, CA Pujan Kapadia, thank you all for your patient listening, and definitely I hope to see you all very soon in my upcoming lecture. Thank you friends for your patient listening. Thank you.